Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. Today, I'm joined by Arlene Baxendale. Arlene is actually, in my opinion, one of the foremost experts in the area of emergency social services. And by that, I mean someone who understands how to put together a reception center for evacuees after a disaster, what role the reception center plays as far as fulfilling donations, volunteer management, helping with the psychosocial needs of evacuees. So stay tuned as I talk to Arlene about the importance of an ESS strategy for your community and how it's all put together. Hey, Arlene, great to see you again. How are you doing today?
Oh, just great, Leanne. How are you?
I'm good, good. Hey, thanks for joining me today. I know that in the work that I've done, you're one of the people I would go to when it comes to emergency social services. But before we get started, can you just describe a little bit about your background?
Well, Leanne, I have a degree in recreation from Acadia University, so you may hear some of my beautiful East Coast accent. And then in 1982, I came to Calgary and obtained my social work degree. After that, in 2001, I became the first emergency social service planner in Alberta. And that was a really unique opportunity at that time to really get emergency social services off the ground locally and start the network across the province. So it's been about 33 years. A little more than half of my life I've been involved in emergency social services.
Well, and I know you're probably too humble to admit it, but I mean, I know that in our province, you probably are the person that understands this component the best. And so that's why I wanted to kind of explore the concept with you. We're going to talk just in an acronym. We're going to talk about ESS, so Emergency Social Services. But when you look at the ESS concept, what all does falls under that area?
You know, it is a much broader area than what people think. You know, everybody thinks emergency social services, there's the reception center, people go there and they get help. But it's much larger than that. We have an opportunity to help people who are in trauma, who are nervous, excited, they've been evacuated. Likelihood is they've never been evacuated before. And they're told to come to a reception center. The average person doesn't know even what to expect when they get there. And it tends to be a very well-oiled machine. The people have practiced. The staff who are staffing it know their job descriptions. They usually know it well, and they're able to help the person from the moment that they arrive at the reception center. There are several components at a reception center itself. When a person is evacuated, they may drive, they may be coming by bus loads, but if they're driving in, they'll probably run into, first and foremost, somebody there directing traffic. And then they end up into a reception center. The first people they see inside that door are meters and greeters. These people are not the cranky pants of the world. These people are highly trained, probably extroverts, and people who know how to handle people in a disaster or in a crisis. The second thing that happens, Leanne, is they have to register. It is a critical piece of emergency social services when there is an activation that the person who is evacuated registers at a reception center. They have to know that the people in power need to know that you are safe and that you have registered for the possibility of getting funds later after the disaster is over. So after they register, they're then directed to a variety of different resources within the center. It may be personal services. You may need to talk to somebody because it's a highly emotional time. You may need food There's always coffee. You can be assured of that. People are responsible and assigned to just look after the food issue. And they do that very well, either with paid staff or it could even be a volunteer. There's also clothing. So if it happens at 3 a.m. and you're in your nightie, or in clothes that are just not warm, or you're now emotionally distraught and you need a blanket, there will be people there that are in charge of just the clothing piece to be able to give you an extra blanket, to give you that comfort that you'll probably need. And usually everyone does need that little extra comfort at a reception center. I mean, your life has just been turned upside down. The other things that are there are lodging. Now, we want to talk about lodging if you're not going to be going back into your home. At the time, most people don't know. It's a moving target. You've been evacuated. Police, fire, EMS, and all the other resources that are out there trying to deal with the disaster. They're the people that make that call. Are you going to be back in your home in 6 hours, 8 hours, 2 days, or is it unknown? If it is that you're going to be out more than 24 hours or 18 hours or whatever, it's a fluid timeline. Yeah. They will help set you up in a local hotel. We try not to use billeting. That really is a last resort. And then there is also the whole piece that just brings you comfort at a reception center. So it's food, clothing, lodging, personal services, and a host of other opportunities. If you need to get your phone recharged, they do everything that they possibly can to make it as easy for you as possible. And we can always expect the unexpected. No activation is ever perfect, but with every activation, we learn new things. And we try really hard to make it easy for the evacuee.
Yeah, which is very customer centric, which is fantastic because at a time of need, that's what you need, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So in the case of, say, a disaster, so the reception centers are activated, your ESS plan is being implemented. Yes. And when say the the response effort is kind of stood down. I mean, it's now said, okay, we're ready to move on. We're stabilized. Does the ESS function continue, or does it end at that point too, and then the regular types of social services start to take their role?
Well, I think it often depends, Leanne, depends on how serious the response is, how serious the disaster itself is. You could end up having to look after and support the emotional, psychological side for days, weeks to come. Usually police, fire, and EMS have done their job and the reception centers are still open. That happens a lot. It's happened a lot in my career where everybody has kind of gone home as far as first responders, and reception centers are open for 2, 3, 4, or 5 days. Some people aren't home when they get evacuated. So you need to have an opportunity for them to come find out the information, find out what to do. How about the cleanup? The recovery starts at the moment that the evacuation happens. Yeah. And there's so much more than just shutting down the reception center and saying, okay, everybody go home now. We're done. There's a whole recovery piece that sets in place, and emergency social services is a vital part of that recovery piece.
So if I'm a community watching and I haven't given much thought to this area, how would you, as far as what you've seen, structures and models, how would you suggest that this kind of component be looked at?
Well, there's many opportunities, but one opportunity that happens here in this province is we have a program called ESNA, Emergency Social Service Network of Alberta. And I would suggest that every province or every state and anybody that's global would look at that networking piece. No one community can do an emergency social service on their own. No one community has all the answers, but together as a collective group, we can solve issues, solve problems. Every community has different issues. Large municipalities have something different than small regions. Theirs may be flood as an example, where some of the smaller communities may have winter weather conditions an issue. So every community has a different set of hazards that they have to be concerned about. So together as a group, we can solve those. The other important part of emergency social services is the training component.
Yeah.
It is vital that the people who end up working at a reception center have some concept, some idea, and specific training on the job that they're doing. I can't stress that enough. I had an opportunity to teach at the Canadian Emergency Management College in Ottawa. I had an opportunity to work with the gal that was in Gander, Newfoundland, and in charge of the evacuees. The whole new movie around Home from Away. That gal had so much information that so many of us had never thought of before. And being able to share that kind of information globally is such a critical component. Another opportunity while we were at that college was to work with the people who looked after the Swiss Air accident and the things that they had to take into consideration at their reception centers that hopefully none of us will ever have to implement, but we sure have some better ideas of what to do if we do have a disaster like that.
Well, and you make a great point, because I think, in your experience and what I've done, when you're on the front lines, you get to kind of see theory in action and see what works and what doesn't work. And then the more you train, the more you talk to people, the more great information you get and things you didn't think of. But the only way sometimes you get that expertise is personal experience.
Yes.
And so that's huge value, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to start this channel, because I know there's great stuff out there, and when people are on the front lines doing this work, it's stressful, and you don't know where to look. And so drawing from people like yourself, who as we talk, we're not stressed right now, so we can talk through what's important, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as what you've seen, is there anything specific where you go, boy, when it comes to ESS, this is consistently one of the hardest challenges that you've seen, or communities just aren't prepared in that area?
Well, I think to start with, Leanne, the whole personal preparedness, we hear it, we shake our head, yeah, we need to do it. You need to get a personal preparedness kit. A grab and go kit, just some of the simple things, your medication, perhaps a copy of your pictures, your will, some of your, maybe your marriage license, those kinds of things that are critical to you. You don't want to be going out the door to get out of the way of a disaster and think, oh, what about Granny's dishes that I inherited? You have to sit down as a family and prepare and decide what's critical, what's important. Don't do it as you're running out the door. There's so many pieces to that. The second thing that I would say is critical in emergency social services is communication. And it happens in every response, every disaster. Communication seems to be the number one issue. If you want accurate, clear communication in a timely manner, I would suggest you go to the reception center. You're not getting it secondhand. You're not getting it through different
social
areas.
media.
Yeah, that's right. The media, not to say that the media isn't accurate, but it may not be timely. Things are moving in such a fast pace that what the media gets at 2:00 in the afternoon can be completely different by 3:30, but you're not going to get that update until the news at 5. So if you're at the reception center, there are people who are in charge of communication. They are in communication with the emergency operations center. They are getting right on the line, top accurate information. That's where you're going to get it. The
Yeah.
second thing that I want to talk about around emergency social services is donation management.
Yeah.
It is often and is the disaster within the disaster. Communication in that area is so vital. People in this world globally want to help. They don't know really what to do, but they feel like the call to do something. That piece of communication needs to get across all the media. That's where the media can help us almost all the time to be able to tell us what it is that the reception center and the people actually need. They don't need blood if there isn't any injuries.
Yeah.
And that's something that has happened in the past. We don't need clothing if clothing isn't an issue. We cannot take food made from home. We have high standards. As an example, here in Alberta, Alberta Health Services have very strict regulations on what we can serve the evacuees and what we cannot. It's critical that we don't poison them at the reception center or give them something that is less than minimum standard. Not to say that people would actually do that, but how they prepare the food and how long it's been in the car coming to the reception center. So we just don't take food that's donated from your home. If it's so I mean, there's another example, but also the donation piece. To bring in donations that have not been asked for or requested through the media causes a lot of angst. It's hard to say no at the door of a reception center. Thank you for the bag of clothes, but I don't need them. It's a very difficult thing to do. It also is very time consuming for the person who is working there. We are usually strapped for people that are trained and screened through the police department, so that they have a police record check, and we don't want to put anybody at risk. So to take people away from what their jobs are to look after donations that may not be required seems to be such a futile exercise. And then what do you do with it afterwards when people didn't need it? So please, that's a critical piece, to listen to communications, to listen to the media. One of the best things to do in any disaster is to make a financial donation. And then that way, there's several organizations out there. The municipalities themselves may receive the donations, and then it would go directly back into that community that's been directly affected.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Before we just wrap up here, I'm just curious, as you talked, I know it's something we didn't really explore yet, but it's a curiosity of mine. When so you said trained personnel, it's important in the reception centers, but I think of people are still human, even the people in the reception center. Yes. And so if you're, say, a reception center in the Bahamas recently, or situations like that, when you, as a person, you're doing a job, you're trained, but you're seeing stuff that's quite traumatic for you as an individual. Like, what is there? Are there models or resources out there for people who are on the front lines seeing this work as well to help them psychologically?
Well, I can tell you, Leanne, there's a number of websites that are available. If you look at your provincial, state websites around FEMA, it could be Alberta Emergency Management, they will have on their website very helpful hints. One of the things that Emergency Social Services is very concerned about is the psychological impact, not only on their workers, but on the evacuees as well. For Emergency Social Services, the people don't do that every day. So they have to go back to their regular jobs. And, we, in the past, we've had opportunities, touch points at the end of your shift. Are you okay? Can I have a coffee with you? Just the whole psychological first aid. It doesn't have to be in-depth therapy. However, at times that may be critical for both staff and for evacuees. But there are a number of websites out there. We could put those, I could send those to you at the end. That would be really helpful hints. The other piece is, Emergency Social Services 101, the basic emergency social service course, is online with Alberta Emergency Management Agency. So you and a team could actually log in and do the course together, or you could do it individually on your own time. And that it's an excellent overview. There are also a number of agencies out there, including the one I'm involved with now, that will do emergency social services courses, run a full day course, and help you and your team or your workers become more familiar with what the expectations are.
Yeah, well, that's great. So is there anything else that we haven't explored that you wanted to share or just make a last comment about?
No, but I guess one of the things that I would also like to mention is that the oil and gas industry here are also becoming very aware of what could happen if there is an evacuation of their staff, as well as the staff of, not just the staff, their staff, sorry, but the community, if they have small evacuations. They are also mandated to open up a reception center. I'm currently working with some of the oil and gas industry and how to liaison with the local municipalities and set up service agreements or such, whatever it's going to work for them, to be able to work together and not in silos. That
Fantastic.
Everybody owns the evacuees. Some are responsible for running the reception center. Some are responsible for giving them clear, accurate information.
That's fantastic. Well, Arlene, thank you for spending a few minutes today with me. I know from a professional standpoint, you've been in this field for a number of years. From a personal standpoint, you're committed to this just because of the way you are. And so thank you very much. And I will include those links that you that could be helpful for people watching. And thanks again for spending time today.
Great. Thank you, Leanne.